owner Jeff Bezos, who is often a target of the president's ire on Twitter, has gone public with threats he received from American Media Incorporated, A.M.I. You might remember A.M.I. They publish the National Enquirer, and they're owned by someone who is a close Trump ally, David Pecker. In emails Bezos made public, A.M.I. overtly threatens to publish graphic and intimate pictures of Bezos unless he publicly states that A.M.I.'s coverage is not politically motivated, and they tell him he has to stop investigating how the Enquirer got a hold of other text messages between Bezos and the woman he was having an affair with. A.M.I. insists it's acted lawfully and was engaged in, quote, good faith negotiations with Bezos. But folks, this story leaves us with so many questions. There are so many threads to pull on here. And the answers to these questions and these threads may have serious consequences for the president himself. Let's go through them. If this was indeed extortion, as Bezos alleges, what was the motive? Was A.M.I. helping the president settle a score? Remember, this is the same outlet that admitted to making hush money payments to help Trump during the election. And then there is the intrigue after a reporter at the Washington Post said that Bezos' private investigator suspects a, quote, government entity may have gotten a hold of these intimate texts. Government. Which government, might you ask? Well, could that government entity be Saudi Arabia? We're going to explain that in a moment, because that isn't just speculation. Lastly, but perhaps most importantly, where does this whole saga fit with what we know about the investigations into Trump, foreign influence campaigns, and his relationship with the Enquirer? Because strange as it seems, this story somehow intersects with all of it. Let's bring in some experts to try to unpack this a bit. Michael Schmidt, Washington correspondent for the New York Times, also, of course, an MSNBC contributor. Gabe Sherman, correspondent for Vanity Fair, MSNBC contributor, media reporter that understands the world of A.M.I. and Mr. Pecker. Jim Kavanaugh, former ATF special agent, MSNBC law enforcement analyst, is done with his share of extorters. And Mimi Rocah, a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York and MSNBC legal analyst. I'll be honest with all four of you, I never thought I would have a quartet like this, but that's how, of sort of this array of expertise across the map, but that's how strange this story is. So let me start with the legal aspect of this and the idea whether this is extortion or not. So Mimi Rocah, I'm going to ask you first. What is the definition of extortion, and does this fit it? Because I'll be honest, I've certainly had my share of back and forths with a subject that I've reported on that might say, all right, I'll leave that out if you're giving me this, or there's part of this you could say is your typical horse trading, although this is not your typical source that I would be dealing with on a typical story. Where does this fit in the definition of extortion?
So, Chuck, first of all, let me just say up front, I think reasonable minds, reasonable prosecutors could differ on whether the conduct so far, what we know about it, which is probably not all there is to know, but just what we know fits within the definition of federal extortion, and that's what I'll focus on. Federal extortion is simply somebody, asking in a demanding or threatening way for something from someone else of value, okay? And usually, right, the quintessential cases I did many of, are, a mobster who says, I'll, gonna hurt you
sure,
unless you give me a bag of money.
Right.
So here it's, we're going to publish these embarrassing photos. We're going to do something to hurt your reputation is really what they're trying to do, which is a threat. I mean, if that falls within the definition of the statute, the question is what they were demanding of Bezos, what they were asking Bezos to do in exchange for not taking that action that they were threatening. Is that a thing of value? I think conservative prosecutors would say, no, not really. They were getting him to agree to, not pursue something, an investigation, a journalistic investigation. They were getting him to agree to make a certain kind of statement. That's horse trading, as you say. I think, and, from my alma mater, the Southern District of New York, I think probably the more aggressive, expanded view is that, yeah, it is, because that is something of value to Bezos. He was trying to investigate, it sounds like, the link between Trump and A.M.I. And if he had uncovered that, if he had uncovered possibly something nefarious about how these texts were acquired, that could have been something of value to Bezos. So I think there's a really good argument that it does fit within the statute. I just want to make one other quick point, which is in this instance, because AMI is under a non-prosecution agreement, we don't even necessarily need to get that far because AMI likely, not for sure, would be found in breach of its agreement based on this conduct. At least it sounds like, they're going to look into that.
So that's the potential connection to Donald Trump. Then there's the connection to a foreign government. Let me put up full screen 2 that we got here. New York Times reporting. Michael Schmidt, I want to ask you this. It says here today, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS as he's known, told a top aide in a conversation in 2017 that he would use a bullet on Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist killed in October, if Mr. Khashoggi did not return to the kingdom and end his criticism of the Saudi government, according to current and former American and foreign officials with direct knowledge of intelligence reports. Why am I bringing this up? Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post reporter. The Washington Post, easily the most aggressive at trying to get the United States to hold Saudi Arabia accountable. They've already been caught or perhaps caught messing around with stolen emails and hacks with Qatar. So Michael Schmidt, how much thread is there to this in this Bezos story?
Look, we based on our reporting, I don't know a ton about that. What we do know is that the Saudis obviously have been very aggressive in the hacking area. There's been a lot of hacking that has gone on in the Gulf with Qatar, with other countries there, and such. Now, look, that's if that were to have gone on and for that hacking to have been gone on into Bezos' stuff to get it would obviously be an enormous deal, a big thing. Our story today, as you were pointing out about Khashoggi, was about the intelligence the United States has about what happened. And this is a text message that was sent about a year ago that the United States was able to see a communication in which MBS was saying this. And these were MBS's words himself. And as you remember, this can all be very confusing, but the president has been super aggressive himself at sort of knocking down the notion that MBS was behind this. They have really downplayed that as much as possible. And what we reported today, my colleague Mark Mazzetti, was just more evidence about why the intelligence community was so convinced that they were behind this, that MBS had a direct hand in this and knew about that. And the president just has refused to accept that. And that's just another mystery in the entire thing. Why would the president bend over backwards for that?
I want to put up full screen number 1 here. And Gabe Sherman, I want to have you help explain sort of the president's personal relationship with David Pecker. The president on January 13, right after the National Enquirer story hit and made it in, and then New York Post immediately sort of did their version of it, said this: "So sorry to hear the news about Jeff Bezos being taken down by a competitor whose reporting, I understand, is far more accurate than the reporting in his lobbyist newspaper, the Amazon Washington Post. Hopefully the paper will soon be placed in better and more responsible hands." It almost feels as if the president was a little too giddy and a little too aggressive in trying to second the Enquirer's reporting there, Mr. Sherman. Explain that relationship.
Well, Chuck, this is a relationship that has gone on for years. Donald Trump has been very close personal friends with David Pecker through his time in Palm Beach, in Florida, where the National Enquirer is based. And during the campaign, has been reported over and over again, the Enquirer served not as a legitimate media organization, but as essentially a free form of advertising. And David Pecker and AMI went into a non-prosecution agreement to avoid campaign finance violations. And so this is clearly a very close relationship, which raises the question I think all of us are asking about this Bezos story, is why the National Enquirer would have done this expose on Jeff Bezos. Yes, he is the world's richest man. Yes, Amazon is a presence in so many people's lives, but he's not a celebrity. He's not a starlet or an actor who is
Right.
And so this raises the question of, was the Enquirer either doing the direct bidding of Trump World, or was this an indirect form of trying to take out one of the president's rivals by doing this story? And just to connect it to the Saudi Arabia
James
angle,
Henry, get out of there.
And AMI has
Get
been
away from
looking
that
for
camera.
financing, and Saudi Arabia.
You're
is a
always
big
wanting to be
source of
starstruck.
capital. And so was this an effort to publish these text messages and photos to curry favor?
You're not
with the
the main
kingdom
theme
to get
here.
an investment at AMI. I mean, that's something I think that federal prosecutors will be looking at.
And let's not forget AMI published that
How come you're
glossy
always
Welcome
getting in
to
front of the
America
camera?
bizarre glossy magazine that showed up in all of our grocery
Always
stores
wanting the
when-
recognition.
when MBS made that first visit to the United States after President Trump.
What
came
am I
into
going to
office.
do with you,
You actually
James?
bring me to the investigator
Huh?
on our panel here, Mr. Kavanaugh. You've had to deal with
I
your
can't
share
make
of
a movie
extorters.
star out of you.
You heard what Gabe Sherman said. The head scratcher about Bezos is as famous as you might think he is. He isn't famous in that sense that you would want to. The National Enquirer readership would even know who Bezos is, the person. They know what Amazon is. So it is sort of odd. It is sort of weird. How would you go about investigating who did this, and how confident are you that Bezos probably has the resources to find this out?
Well, I'd go right to the motive. You're hitting the nail right on the head. That's right where the commanders would go, right where I always went to, because I want to uncover the reason for the crime, and that leads me to the next step. Look, you're exactly right. Everybody doesn't know who Jeff Bezos is. And if he wasn't the owner of the Washington Post, he was just a man who delivered packages, we wouldn't be here. You'd be covering some other thing on the Hill today. But the reason he's in the position he is, he's being extorted, and or his witnesses are being tampered with because he is the owner of the Post. There's a very strong motive here. He said it in his email, Mr. Bezos did, that the David Pecker was apoplectic about the Saudi connection. So what's driving Mr. Pecker, A.M.I., what's driving that side of this interaction, the message to, you better do this or we're going to publish these pictures. Let me reframe this based on what Gabe said, and of course I agree with Mimi's assessment on the extortion as well. But there's other things that come into play here. If there was a hack by Saudi Arabia of digital communications, or if there's an interstate conspiracy to steal or get these digital communications, you have to look a little bit differently at this. You look then at Gavin de Becker, the private eye, and my people have had some interactions with him. He has a tremendous reputation, a great guy. You got to look at him a little different. Everybody's looking at him as an investigator. You have to look at him as a witness, because the federal witness tampering statute is extremely strong. It doesn't need violence or threat of violence. It's for someone who corruptly persuades someone who may have information about a possible federal criminal violation. Doesn't even have to be one, just a possible one. And if they try to corruptly persuade that person not to tell law enforcement, then that is witness tampering. And so if you have an underlying federal crime, conspiracy to steal the digital communications, or hacking, a wire intercept by Saudi, you could have witness tampering. So I think there's extortion possible here, there's witness tampering possible here. And I would say that Gavin de Becker has called the federal agents in L.A., he's probably called LAPD and LASO, Chuck, and asked them to look into this. It needs to be looked into. That doesn't mean there's a crime has been committed.
Right.
But you're going to have to talk to all your legal analysts like Mimi to get into those statutes. But as an investigative commander, that's where we'd be driving it. And the main question we would have is, how did AMI get this information? How did they get this information? Want to drive that first. Was it hacked? Was it stolen? Did it come from a relative or a crony? Right. Was there a conspiracy to get it? Was there other people involved? That's what we'd be driving at.
Mimi Rocha, last question to you is, who will have jurisdiction of this for the investigative unit? I heard Jim talk about all the L.A. Parts of it. Is SDNY just going to take a look first? Could this come out of Seattle? Could this come out of L.A.? Which federal entity is likely about to open up an investigation here?
Well, I'm laughing because as soon as Jim said, that the investigator would be calling these other offices, the Southern District person in me said, no, wait a minute. Look, I think because the Southern District already has an interest in this, in the form of this non-prosecution agreement with AMI, which they may have violated, they're going to start looking into it. Now, is there going to be, a cooperation amongst different offices? Will they have to work together? Will there be turf battles? Those things could all happen. But, if I were still in the Southern District, I would lay claim to this because we have an interest in it, and they're well equipped already to be looking at these kinds of connections that we're all talking about between Trump and AMI and what's behind that. Jim's exactly right. It's not just about this extortion. It's about why did AMI engage in this very reckless, possibly criminal conduct? What were they trying to hide? What are they covering
what
up?
were they doing in the first
And I
place?
think the Southern District's going to want to look at that.
Well, I tell you, you guys were a great quartet. Jim Cavanaugh, Mimi Rocha, Gabe Sherman, Michael Schmidt. As I said, it's a quartet I didn't think I'd ever be putting together, but the Jeff Bezos story is just that strange, that odd, and perhaps that complicated. You guys did a great job of breaking it down. Thank you so much. Up next, breaking news out of the escalating crisis in Virginia. Another woman has just come forward, just in the last hour, to accuse the lieutenant governor of a sexual assault 4 years earlier than the other one he's been accused of. We'll be back with that in a moment.
James Henry, listen to me. I know you want to be a star. I know you do. But whenever we got a program going and I'm streaming, I can't have you getting up in front of the camera like that all the time. We know the girls like you. You're attractive. Yeah, you're good looking. But as soon as I turn that camera on, you want to get in front of it. You want to be the star of the show. And sometimes we got other business to conduct other than showing you off. Do you hear me? Huh? Do you understand? James. Oh, James. James, do you hear what I'm saying to you? Huh? Do you hear me, James Henry? Huh? You're part of the Henry Rifle bunch, ain't you? Uh-huh. You probably made the Henry Rifle. You probably are more powerful than the Henry Rifle, ain't you? Huh? James, we can't have you taking over the show. Okay? All right? Well, there we go. Pertaining to what went on with one of our American reporters simply by criticizing the Saudi Arabia family that's got a whole lot more to hide other than just the dismemberment of a reporter. They masterminded 9/11, and now they're squirming and worming, and they don't know what to do because we're cornering them up and entrapping them just like a bunch of animals, wild, vicious animals that they truly are. A group of people that bomb schools, that bomb funeral homes during funerals, that bomb children. These people should not be looked upon as being human beings. They should be looked upon as being animals. And I'm kind of like that one news anchorman or reporter that they was talking to. I think he was from Tennessee. He may have been a senator or something. Why is Trump covering their tracks so much pertaining to the involvement that the Trump Foundation has with the Saudi Foundation? There's got to be something mysteriously hidden right there in that relationship in and of itself, or it seems like it is. It's given that appearances anyway. Thanks again for allowing for me to view my program. To my viewers, shalom.